Welcome back to my channel. An apology is meant to be a reckoning, a moment to face the truth, not a makeover. And yet, here comes Cody, all polished, rehearsed, and conveniently vague, serving up "I want to apologize" the way a publicist delivers a crisis statement, carefully measured, softly lit, and allergic to specifics. So, the real question is simple. Is this genuine remorse, or just a PR move? Watch what happens when the script gets tested. Robyn is asked about a wife possibly coming back, and suddenly, hope turns into a panicked escape hatch. Janelle hears Cody's performance, and instead of holding him accountable for the damage, especially the damage done to the kids, she offers a giggle, a gentle excuse, leaving the door just slightly ajar. Meanwhile, Christine refuses to follow the schedule of suffering, and somehow, that becomes the biggest offense of all. Within a minute, the language is dissected, because the truth often hides in what he refuses to say. Reality TV rarely delivers genuine surprise, but occasionally it gives us something even more striking, a moment of unguarded honesty that punctures the carefully laminated narratives. One such moment comes in an in-person encounter with Christine, a meeting treated with the reverence usually reserved for saints, therapists, or people who actually return shopping carts without being asked. The emotional weight is real. A stepmother's tears, a divorce survived, a child finding courage to stand up to a domineering father. Whatever you think of the franchise's theatrics, it's hard to dismiss the real-life impact when viewers see themselves in the wreckage. Then, in a flourish equal parts devotion and spectacle, David shows up wearing a shirt featuring Christine, as if subtlety were a vice to be avoided at all costs. The message is clear. Admiration is not just felt, it's merchandised. Predictably, this sparks backlash and suspicion toward any new partner entering a televised family saga. But defending David is simple. He's presented as a decent, genuine person. Not perfect, but refreshingly grounded after years of Kody Brown's self-absorbed pageantry. A man who openly shows affection, who enjoys his partner instead of competing for her attention, feels revolutionary in this universe. Criticism of him is less about facts and more about habit. Viewers conditioned to expect the worst are simply measuring him against Cody. And if the standard is Cody, then David being 1,000,000% better isn't exaggeration, it's basic arithmetic performed amid the rubble of a collapsed marriage economy. If Christine's segment radiates warmth, Robyn's interview delivers something else. The unmistakable sound of a narrative engine stalling mid-spin. Asked how she'd feel if one of the wives returned, her response isn't measured or reflective, it's frantic. The visible scramble, the halting search for a socially acceptable answer, the awkward pivot into vagueness. This isn't hope. This is someone caught without a script. The performance starts polite, collapses into avoidance, and finally hides behind a familiar shield it's too painful to discuss. Pain here functions less as an emotion and more as a press credential. An all-access pass that shuts down follow-ups while preserving a flattering image. Even the threatened walk-off isn't so much distress as control. If the narrative can't be managed, the scene simply ends. And what makes all this revealing isn't just the fluster, it's what the fluster exposes. Years of carefully curated right answers. Years of being cast as the fragile, misunderstood figure are briefly undone by a single question demanding an honest reaction. The mask slips. Disgust tries to dress itself up as wounded optimism. That infamous line about hope can be painful lands like a feeble attempt at sounding noble while sidestepping a far simpler truth. The idea of another wife returning isn't about romantic rivalry. It threatens the arrangement Robyn has clearly benefited from. The division of time, affection, and yes, resources. A returning wife isn't just an emotional complication. She's a budget line item. Seen in that light, Robyn's panicked evasiveness starts to make perfect sense. This isn't heartbreak. It's accounting. Hovering over her, though, is a broader accusation. Disingenuousness as a lifestyle. The smirk, the smugness, the selective sympathy for other people's struggles, especially her melodramatic commentary about how hard dating is these days, lands poorly when you remember she didn't stumble into this marriage. By many accounts, she pursued it with strategic intent. The image painted isn't of a reluctant participant in a complex religious culture, but of a woman who understood the system, navigated it skillfully, and now performs innocence as if the audience has no memory. Her sanctimony about modern online dating becomes even more striking when you contrast it with her alleged history of actively seeking opportunities within her religious community. Acting as though dating today is tragic while having treated courtship like a full-scale campaign? Sympathy isn't the natural reaction. Sarcasm is. Robyn's credibility problems only grow when you notice her apparent delight in other people's discomfort. She doesn't seem sorry for women re-entering the dating world. She seems pleased they have to struggle. Whether she believes it's what they deserve may be uncharitable, but it fits the recurring image of someone who benefits from the fallout while mourning loudly for the cameras. The one exception, of course, is Christine. Her refusal to suffer on schedule is framed as a personal affront to Robyn's preferred storyline. Christine's happiness becomes a narrative crime because, in Robyn's world, everyone else should pay the price for leaving. That brings us to Janelle, and the recurring question, is she truly finished with Cody, or simply taking a long scenic detour? The theory isn't subtle. Janelle will go back. The evidence comes from years of history and temperament, her accommodating sacrifices, living in an RV, consistently putting Cody first, prioritizing the marital bond even when the children's needs were obvious. In this view, the affection she shows isn't incidental, it's predictive. Some go further, arguing she's historically valued the marriage, even the sex life, over her children, or at least treated it as the central axis around which everything else spins. The comparison to her mother makes the pattern feel almost inherited. An older woman who claimed she never intended to enter polygamy, yet stayed anyway, whether from love, habit, or ideology. The suggestion is that Janelle may believe she's different, but patterns die hard. From there, the imagined roadmap to reconciliation almost reads like a bureaucratic plan. First, a falling out between Robyn and Cody. Enough friction to push him from the only household still tolerating his ego full-time. Second, Janelle, ever the practical anchor, takes him in. Third, the Tata Farms venture becomes the predictable financial and logistical sinkhole many side projects do when enthusiasm outruns competence. The prediction goes something like this. The venture will either cost too much or fail outright, forcing a sell-off after a year or two of attempted domestic peace. Then comes Wyoming, the final gravitational pull in this story. Janelle is expected to settle there eventually, partly because she has shown she can adapt to almost any conditions, partly because of family ties, and most painfully because Garrison is buried there. The argument is that grief, geography, and identity will collide until Wyoming isn't just an option, it becomes inevitable. And if Cody dreams of a gigantic barnuminium, the suggestion is that Janelle might build it, quietly welcoming him back into the life she claims to have left. Hovering over all of this is Cody himself, a man performing his own mythology. The cowboy patriarch, surrounded by adoring wives, driving a flashy convertible through tumbleweeds, attempting to recreate his father's legacy with less skill and more hair. The contempt in the commentary is unmistakable. He's described as a duplicitous showman, flamboyant in self-regard and allergic to accountability. His apologies aren't about repair, they're performances, carefully crafted to rehabilitate his image, not mend the damage he's caused. The distinction is crucial. Saying, "I want to apologize," is prelude. Saying, "I'm sorry, is ownership." Critics argue Kody prefers the former because it allows him to appear humble while staying conveniently vague. It's word salad dressed as moral growth. This is why Janelle's response during the apology conversation sparks such fury. The complaint isn't just that she listened, it's that she accommodated. She giggled. She excused. She softened the framing. There was no instruction manual for how to handle 3 decades of relational chaos. Chaos that some see not as a string of misunderstandings, but as sustained neglect and manipulation. The anger is visceral because the stakes aren't abstract. Kody's cruel treatment of the children, especially Gabe and Garrison, is cited repeatedly as the moral center Janelle is accused of abandoning in that moment. Critics insist the only appropriate response would have been blunt, maternal, and direct. Call the children, apologize to them, repair the harm where it truly mattered. Anything else is framed as betrayal, or at minimum, as prioritizing personal closure over parental responsibility. The anger intensifies when Garrison's death is mentioned. On its harshest edge, some argue a mother should be incapable of warmth toward a man linked to that level of pain. Forgiveness, in this view, isn't strength, it's capitulation. The dinner conversation, for some, reads as a slap in the face to the children, a glaring disappointment, proof that Janelle is still vulnerable, still shaped by a culture and religion that trained women to put the husband first. The contempt extends beyond her to the broader cast, who are accused of consistently prioritizing Kody over their children, though tempered by the note that this is what their belief system teaches. Yet Kody remains, in this moral accounting, the central villain. Even so, beneath the outrage is a quieter, countering perspective, a call to humility. This view doesn't excuse Kody's behavior, but it challenges the certainty with which outsiders prescribe grief. Families personally affected by suicide and estrangement know there is no single correct emotional response. No one can fully see the complexities of Garrison's life, the friendships, the work pressures, the military service, the unseen struggles that may have shaped him far more than a parent, no matter how well-intentioned, could manage. The argument points to a difficult truth. It's incredibly hard to help another adult if they refuse it. Helplessness isn't a moral failure. It's often just reality. And most importantly, no one makes someone take their own life. Mental illness does. Expecting a grieving mother to sustain a lifetime of rage isn't righteous. It's cruelly unrealistic. Grief drains the body. It doesn't recruit it for endless battle. This perspective also offers a caution about what we see on television. Viewers only get edited fragments, never the full picture. We don't know what Janelle has privately discussed with her children, nor what boundaries the children may have requested. Expecting a parent to litigate every injury on camera ignores that many adult children prefer separation between their parents' relationship with an ex and their own relationship with that parent. Some families compartmentalize for survival. Some people choose apathy over confrontation because confrontation offers no repair, only exhaustion. In that light, the lack of a shouting match isn't weakness. It's a refusal to spend precious energy on someone who will not change. Sometimes, a relationship dies more decisively from indifference than from anger. Here's where the show's manipulation becomes clear. It trains audiences to confuse accountability with volume. Wanting Janelle to publicly humiliate Kody is understandable. He's earned 1,000 uncomfortable moments. But insisting she do it in a particular emotional key, rage, contempt, scorched earth, ignores how grief can reorder priorities. The death of a child can make the petty war of ex-spouses feel meaningless, even when the ex is clearly culpable. That doesn't excuse Kody, it just acknowledges that grief doesn't always perform moral purity on cue. The criticism of Janelle also hinges on patterns. The claim is she rarely held Kody's feet to the fire unless it affected her directly. She responds to his familiar playbook because it worked for decades. That playbook is grimly simple. Bond over a shared enemy, often cheerfully. Frame Janelle as the safest wife. Deploy charm, and let nostalgia do the rest. Kody's charisma, whether visible or not, is a lever he knows how to pull. The show itself once suggested he was used to getting his way. When that control slipped, wives refusing to shun each other, Janelle refusing to exile her sons, his true self emerged. Meaner, harsher, far less polished. Critics go further, suggesting this cruelty echoes what he may have learned from his father, a tactic honed when love bombing failed. In this light, Kody's apology tour reads less like redemption and more like brand management. He chooses carefully what to apologize for, usually limiting himself to things he personally believes he is responsible for, which, conveniently, is almost nothing. He offers vague regret while ignoring the specific harms that demand concrete repair, abandonment, verbal cruelty, fractured relationships with grandchildren barely known. Frustration deepens because Janelle appears to enable the performance, not asking questions, not insisting on clarity, not naming the damage. Being the first stop on the tour? A dubious honor. An early bird special at the Restaurant of Accountability Theater. And yes, the critique doesn't spare the other original wives either. Christine is accused of leaving primarily because Kody refused to be intimate with her, though it's dressed up as concern for modeling a loveless marriage for her children. Critics argue she tolerated far worse behavior over the years, only deciding to leave when her own needs were denied. Past instances, suggested moments of neglect around surgeries and illnesses, are held up as points where a truly child-centered ethic should have triggered departure. Mary, by contrast, is framed as someone who didn't so much leave as slowly get frozen out, making her story feel less like a choice and more like a quiet eviction. In this cynical view, if Kody were to offer Christine an apology, she would accept. Not because he deserves it, but because the show's emotional economy rewards neat closure arcs. The cast has rarely been immune to narrative convenience. So what remains after the giggles, the smirks, the evasions, the word salad apologies, and the audience's competing moral judgments? A portrait of a family that has spent decades confusing endurance with virtue. Robyn's panic reveals that the Hope storyline has always been more about control than reconciliation. Kody's careful apology language shows that accountability is still something he treats like a negotiable fee, not a moral obligation. Janelle's softness might reveal either a dangerously enduring attachment or a strategic detachment, or maybe both, because humans are rarely tidy. And the audience's anger? That tells us something just as revealing. After years of watching harm go unaddressed, viewers are hungry for consequences that actually bite, not platitudes framed under soft lighting. The real tragedy, of course, is that the people who most deserve protection, the children, rarely get to be the center of the adult decisions that reshape their lives. That is why the simplest demand keeps resurfacing. Stripped of all theatrics, call the children, apologize to them, repair what can be repaired where it matters most. Everything else, the romantic nostalgia, the interviews, the smirks, the on-camera trembling over painful hope, is just set dressing for a question the show has always quietly posed. What is the value of a family structure that asks its children to absorb the cost of adult egos? Subscribe for more.